Us. Welcome to the Earning Curve. The Earning Curve is a new platform in webinars and different from other webinars you guys may have attended in the past. So we let all the questions come from the audience, so you drive the panel. My name is Marianne Biangardi, and I'm the head of business development at Schmersahl, Treloar and Company. Today's topic is why mapping a customer buying journey equals more revenue. And it's not about how you want to sell, it's more about how your customers want to buy. So that's where the customer buying journey comes in. Understanding and mapping out this process will lead to a more organized sales process and greater revenue. And we have a lot of experts here today to discuss that very topic. Since all of you drive the panel, we need you to help us out and send us your questions. So start thinking about those and send them up through the chat. It's a thought bubble icon at the bottom of your screen. Just type those in and we will get them answered. So let's get started with some introductions. Today, our anchor panelist is Dan Klein from Spoke Marketing. Welcome, Dan. Dan is the CEO of Spoke Marketing. He's a serial entrepreneur. He has spent his life growing multiple businesses. And if you know Dan, he's a huge fan of the Kansas City Chiefs. And he's originally from California, so he wears shorts all year long. So I'm really happy the weather's nice enough to actually wear shorts, so we don't have to see Dan out in the cold because he just wears them all winter with his shorts on. He enjoys spending his free time with his wife and his 4 boys. Kelsey Raymond is next. Kelsey's with Influence & Co. She is welcome Kelsey. She is the CEO and co-founder of this content marketing company called Influence & Co. Kelsey helps clients strategize, create, publish, and distribute content that accomplishes their goals. Kelsey's also an avid golfer, and she wishes she had more time to play golf. And she's got a young son that she cannot wait until he is old enough to start playing, and she can teach him how to play golf. GV Freeman is a growth strategist. He's up next. Welcome, GV. GV has over 20 years of experience living at the center of marketing, product, sales, and self-care, a self-care Venn diagram. He pulls from all these disciplines to help startups launch, companies grow, and entrepreneurs live integrated lives. GV is a spiritual tourist. He travels the world, attends as many concerts as possible, of course, not with COVID, but hopefully soon. He loves spending time with his friends and his soul family. GV's interest and experience span many roles, including entrepreneur, executive, marketer, coach, salesman, product manager, DJ, and yoga teacher. Chris Westmeyer is up next. Chris is with Digital Strike. He's the principal and strategic lead. Welcome, Chris. Always great to have you guys all back on the show, and everybody has been here before, so we're all kind of seasoned to this. Chris's expertise is in lead generation and search marketing. Chris spends his time, the rest of his free time, with his wife, watching his twin boys play hockey. Chris is also a collector of unique collectibles, and in the inside of his office, he has like a Cheshire Inn decor and feel. It's really cool and eclectic. And before we open it up to your questions, I want to ask Dan a starter question here as the lead panelist. After Dan responds, I would like all the other panelists to jump in and comment as well. So Dan, how does mapping a customer buying journey lead to more revenue?
Dan, I think you're on mute.
There.
There.
You should start off every single call with having to tell somebody that, right? So, good morning again. I think there's lots of ways that it can increase sales, but I kind of center on this as kind of a sales conversion technique. So the better that you understand your ideal customer profile, the better you can talk directly to them, where they are in that buying cycle. So whether it be in a awareness, consideration, or decision. So it's about reaching them where they are, how they want to be talked to. And you can tailor your marketing and calls to action to that. And so I use it, to increase conversion.
And Dan, what we've seen in general across a lot of the clients that we deal with is that that journey isn't always linear, and people like to see it as being a linear journey because it looks good on a graph, it looks good on a chart showing that top down. What's interesting is people will come in at different areas of that and ultimately go to different areas. And so what a lot of our clients struggle with is understanding how to map out, provide education, provide engagement opportunities, how to figure out how to nurture. We see a lot of people on the search side just assuming that all we're going to do is grab all the bottom of the funnel opportunities and see what we can get out of it. And what we're missing for a lot of those clients, and what we try to show them, is a lot of times you have to create the demand for your brand. You have to create that awareness. And that is all that top part of that funnel, based on persona targeting, based on interest targeting. And it's not always as definable as I paid $50 for Facebook brand impressions and I got $2,000 in value. So we're struggling to redefine and show clients how to do all that engagement, and then how ultimately can that be tied back to some value proposition at the end, instead of just we put a billboard up and it looks really pretty.
I think you make such a good point, Chris, about it not being linear, and that's absolutely what we're seeing with clients as well. And I think that makes such the case for having different avenues that those clients can choose to engage with you, whether that be they come to your website and they subscribe to your blog, and then they don't really think about you for 3 months, but all of a sudden you're top of mind again and they come back to your blog. I think that's exactly what we're seeing happening. They're not following this one path over a 6-week period. They're jumping in and out. And so you need to have that content to be able to stay top of mind with them for the moment that they're ready to jump back in.
And to your point, Kelsey, a lot of people think of content as just what they want to tell their audience, like what they want to say about themselves, not necessarily what people want to ingest. So what we find is a lot of people want to talk at their audience. They're not having the conversation with them, using the vernacular, the interest level, because they are more focused on just getting the sale and getting it done. So I don't know what you're seeing on your side, but I think there's a lot more educational content that needs to be created in order to increase that brand awareness and get people touching your brand and learning about who you are before they're ready to make a big, especially in B2B, before they make a big choice.
You brought up B2B, and I want to take maybe a little bit different approach and related a little more on the sales side. So why is mapping the customer journey important? Oftentimes, and I hate to say it, but about 50% of marketers that I work with don't understand the customer or the journey. The people that do understand that are the salespeople. And if you work together with your marketing and your sales team, you can actually build a map that is really representative of the customer. And then rather than putting all of the onus on marketing as to what people should get and when, I really involve my sales teams in this. Allowing sales teams to trigger content, to trigger drip campaigns to customers, because they actually know where their buyers are at. Now, if it's a B2C transactional low dollar sale, that's going to be hard to do. But if you have a salesperson that actually is working with maybe 5 stakeholders in a deal, they can send different content to different stakeholders, and maybe that's a drip campaign, maybe that's a different ebook or something like that, to the people when they need it, rather than just allowing our marketing automation system to, spew out whatever some marketer has told it to.
What's interesting to that, GV, is that kind of goes in line with exactly, I think what we're saying is every journey isn't the same. And so if we treat them all as being the same, we're going to miss out on a lot. And so if we can create journeys based on where they are in their own journey, and the trigger is not necessarily a marketing trigger, it could be a sales trigger, and the salespeople knowing their audience better than the marketers sometimes, I think you're onto something there. The problem we have is they don't value the sales team. The sales team doesn't value the marketing doesn't value. For some reason, they separated at some point and never came back together.
Well, and I think that it's starting to. People are the chief revenue officer is a great role that is trying to kind of combine both of them together again. But I think that marketers have been really taught for many years to focus on personas. And I think that, we do a good job at that level. But what I tell people when I'm setting up marketing campaigns for them is personas don't buy things, people do. And personas work with marketing, sales works with people, and we should trust the salesperson, like who gets what content and when, and let marketing do their job of creating really great content, what the design and the copy and making sure that all of the commas are in the right place. Let marketing do that and let sales figure out who needs what and when.
I think you're both speaking to such an important point, which is just marketing and sales alignment. And that's been something that over the last year, we've seen that when we're working with clients, half of what we're doing in that first month is just forcing more alignment between their marketing and sales. Because exactly what you're saying, GV, like the salespeople know what the customers want more, but the marketers know how to create that into content that the people will actually read. And so we do a lot of joint meetings with our sales and marketing teams where the marketing team is interviewing salespeople. What are the biggest objections you're hearing on calls? What are the things that are getting people's eyes to light up? Because you really do need both point of views to create that content for the buyer's journey.
I would love. Oh, who was I stepping over? I'll go. To the point, I think one of my favorite things to do as a marketer is sit in a sales meeting, especially when we've rolled out some collateral or things they're going to use, because it is different from what marketing's perspective is when they create a piece of collateral, but hearing how the salespeople talk about it and how they use it, or even educating them on how to use the right piece, it can often change exactly what you create, right? So if you sit there and listen, and I think more and more companies are doing that, or I'm finding, I don't know if you find this to be true, Kelsey or Chris, but there's more heads of sales that are running marketing these days.
What's interesting about this conversation that you guys are going around is GV, especially, there's a lot of assumptions made that the sales team is good. So I'm going to go back to senior living just for a minute, because we have a large presence inside that world. And we listen to thousands of calls a month. We look at follow-ups from emails and chats and such. It's absolutely amazing how many times the ball is dropped. It's amazing how when someone answers at the front desk, they can't get it to the salesperson. The salesperson says, I'm really busy giving a tour, I don't have time right now. This is a decision that could be a $300,000 to $500,000 lifetime value for a facility, and they will fight tooth and nail and spend thousands of dollars to get a lead, only to have the salesperson drop it. So I'm seeing this struggle in many verticals and many areas, not strictly small B2B, but in other ones where they just don't have the equipment. They're really good at bringing it home at the very end, almost like if you go to a car lot, they'll come out and they'll negotiate a price with you and you can buy the car, but they're not going to educate you on why a sedan is better than a coupe, or they're not going to start that journey with you. So they're closers, or they're tour operators, or if you have a roofing company, they'll come and give you an estimate, but they don't want to educate you. They don't want to help you. If you don't want an estimate, go away. So we struggle with sometimes making sure the sales team even is that connected. So in an ideal world, I want sales and marketing aligned. Big B2B seems to work better that way, but a lot of big opportunities just don't. So we're having to dance around it.
I mean, and I think that I totally agree with you. I think that in that case, marketing's got their finger pointed at sales. And in many cases, sales can point their finger at marketing and say, you're sending stuff to my client and I don't even know what it is you're sending and it's wrong. And so I see this all the time with one team pointing at the other. And that's for a neutral party like myself to go in and sort of like put people back in their corners and begin picking apart some of the intricacies to channel another guest from a previous panel. Like Christy Jones will say, if it's not in the CRM, it didn't happen. And if if companies are not willing to invest in the technology and the leadership necessary to train their salespeople how to teach customers and to educate customers, then there's nothing that the individual salesperson or marketing can do about it. Like this has to start at a level, at usually at least a senior VP or C-suite level, and this has to be pushed down through both of those departments. If you can't get buy-in from the top, you're never going to make progress.
And I think the structure of those two teams and the roles that you have make a really big impact on that, because a few years ago, we introduced a role that really sits kind of between sales and marketing. That's the sales development rep. So this is a woman on our team who any leads that are coming in through the website, whether that be a contact form or they're downloading something, she is qualifying them, and then she is doing the outreach and ultimately setting up a call with the salesperson. But the reason that we had to introduce that role is because the salespeople were always going to be more focused on the people that are currently in their pipeline than a contact form that might be qualified or it might not be. So by introducing that role, we increased the rate of people that we were actually taking from a contact form to a qualified sales call by like 200%. And so I think sometimes it's also thinking creatively about, are we asking people to do something that is a distraction from where they're incentivized? So if they're incentivized to close deals, is potentially wasting time on an unqualified lead a distraction, and they're just not going to do it. So incentives and role structure really play into this conversation a lot.
Yeah, Kelsey, I think you're 100% dead on that. That is where we see a lot of struggle, and it's making people do things that aren't necessarily in their wheelhouse or towards their objective. And it's easier to work on something that's hot than deal with something that's lukewarm. And what we see many times, and maybe you see this too, and Dan, I think, sees it, I'm not sure on GV's side, but we see a lot of people trying to use marketing to solve a sales problem. And, they come in and they're like, well, we'll just do better marketing and everything will get better. It doesn't. It makes the problem much worse, and it exposes all the warts and all and creates all these issues. And then we're dealing with it later. So I think it's really smart how you're dealing with it up front and engaging with the sales teams and getting them to do that. We struggle with it because a lot of times they won't let it in and they want to keep it separate. So again, we're dancing around it until the problem becomes big enough that we can have that conversation.
Well, I think that part of the issue, and I think that Dan can speak to this, is that most marketing leaders do not come from a sales background. Most sales leaders don't come from a marketing background, and it's rare to find somebody who can truly understand and speak to both sides of the house. So there is a little bit of a unicorn property to that person. I'm gonna steal one of Marianne's questions though, because I want to go back and ask Kelsey and maybe tie all of this back to the original question. Kelsey, if you were able to explain how hiring a BDR mapped to your customer journey, like what part of the customer journey is that, or what part of the customer journey is that BDR solving for that you maybe hadn't recognized before?
Yeah, great question. And the role that she is playing is touching multiple points of that journey. Because on the one end, if someone comes to our website and fills out a contact form, they might have already engaged with articles I wrote for HubSpot, with a press mention we got in Entrepreneur Magazine, and they might have read 10 blog posts. So they might be incredibly qualified and primed, and that's the bottom of the funnel, or the end of the journey. Or they might be someone who came to our website through organic search, downloaded a white paper, and they're not expecting her to set up a sales call. So then really she's putting them in a customized sequence, and she's doing that nurturing part of the journey. So this one role is even touching potential clients at multiple stages of that journey. But the biggest issue we were looking to solve was the fact that we had people filling out contact forms, and then our salespeople were not getting them to actually set up a sales call because it was too much of a distraction.
So essentially, I think what you just said was what my original comment is that you're now treating somebody like a person rather than having your marketing automation system say, oh, well, they downloaded this white paper, so they must be in this stage of the buyer's journey and they must be this persona. And maybe they're just out doing research and they happened upon a decent piece of content that sparked their interest, but you have some actual human being that is able to now begin directing what content they're giving and where they're at in the process.
You are spot on that the automation was not good enough here.
Yeah.
We need to have the combination of automation and the human element. And that is something so many of our clients miss. So many companies just want it all to be automation and take the human element completely out of it, or they only have a phone number on their website and that's the only way that you can engage with them. So it's all human and there needs to be that combination.
Yep.
I want to add to this that, when you look at creating the buyer's journey, because we talked to assume there's one in place, that the work to actually create it is involved with the SDRs and the BDRs, and it, the document that can come out, if you've taken into account the customer buyer journey, it really does align everybody together in that same thing, getting them to actually discuss it. So the actual process of thinking through it together is often enough to have that flow pretty well. And completing the actual, a document that, aligns that sales and marketing becomes a pretty good playbook overall. So the ones that I've seen, it becomes a playbook for each of that type of customer. And no matter where they are, back to Chris's point, dropping in or out, you kind of have a play already called for it. Right?
And Dan, do you see resistance in people wanting to spend money on learning who they are? It's almost like going to therapy. It's uncomfortable for businesses to know that they've got weakness. It's uncomfortable to pull that out in front of their employees and the team that's there. It's uncomfortable to do it. So how often do you see the opportunity to really, go into therapy with a client, come back with a solution, and ultimately plan a process going forward? Because for some reason, a lot of clients we run into think they know their audience, think they know how to go to market, think they know better than we may know on something, and just want us to mechanically execute something where we stop them and say, we don't think this is the best spend of your money. We don't think this is the best experience your potential customers are going to have. Can we rethink this? And many times there's hesitancy to spend the $5,000, $10,000, $20,000 to rethink this whole process and come back with a real plan. How are you dealing with that?
Well, it does happen a lot, right? People, putting myself in their shoes, right? Like, having been a marketer in a company that's really busy, you're running all the time. And so you have to do what's kind of easy or what or what you understand. And, and you have a tendency to go to that. So it's hard to kind of open up your mind. I find that a lot of, CEOs these days, at least the ones, there's so many more peer advisory groups like Vistage, et cetera. It's kind of opening up at least those that are in charge of things to say, look, we don't know everything, right? It's time to look at. But when you run into somebody that does know everything, well, we just let them go do it because they were going to do it better anyways. But if we can expand their vision and say, if you think about this portion, we reach in there and there's some openness, it's easy to get them to shift and see what they don't know. But I much like the ones better that already come in knowing they don't know everything, right?
Yeah, the ones who are open for change, open for the opportunity, instead of just looking for a silver bullet.
I also think that Chris, you specifically are stuck in a rough spot because I've worked with you a long time and I know how much you know about the process. The people, especially new customers that you might have the opportunity to work with, they've probably worked with 10 other vendors who say that they do what you do. And they're going to say, oh, well, this is just another SEO guy. This is just another paid search guy. He's just going to take our money and rip us off the way that everybody else did. And the other guy, and it didn't work before, so how can you tell me it's going to work now? And I see that a lot, that people have gotten burned in the past, therefore they're not willing to go really down the rabbit hole. I don't want to use a horrible phrase, but it's one that I often use with my customers, is I say, I'm going to be the diplomat. I'm going to be the person who tells you to go to hell so that you look forward to the trip. Because it's like lifting up the covers and exposing both of the sales and the marketing side is really important. I'm working with a client right now who continues to say, we need more leads, we need more leads. Finally, marketing dove into the CRM and said the leads that we were creating on average it was taking 18 days for a salesperson to follow up with them.
Yep.
And I said, I'm not giving you another lead until you can give me a service level agreement between marketing and sales that says you're going to call people within 24 hours. And you have to have somebody that can look holistically at, again, and oftentimes it's sales, marketing, and customer success when we're looking across the full revenue channel. You need somebody that can go in and look at all three of those buckets and look at the inflection points and KPIs in each one to figure out where some of the issues are happening, if those are available.
And we do something that we're now recommending to a lot of clients of basically a gut check or an audit of doing once a quarter, or you can do it all the time. We just do it once a quarter now, of when the SDR is setting up a call, she gives a qualified number on a scale of 1 to 5. And then the salesperson, after they have a call, give a qualified number on a scale of 1 to 5. And we're comparing those so that we also can understand, is what marketing thinks is qualified the same as what the sales team thinks is qualified? Because if you're not even on the same page of what a qualified lead is, that's just going to break down further.
It's really smart, Kelsey.
And I would say that goes back to what Dan mentioned before with ideal client profile, knowing what a qualified lead looks like, creating a contract between marketing and sales that says, if they score above a 3, then we're going to move them to sales. If they're 1, 2, or 3, then it's marketing's job to nurture them for a period of time.
And I think the difficult part about all of this, everything we're talking about, is getting clients to understand that this needs to happen. They have to budget not only the money, but the time and the team's time to make this happen. This is not, you just hired a marketing firm and everything's going to go great, or you just hired a sales trainer and everything's going to be great. This is a whole seismic shift within their organization, and it requires everyone's buy-in, not just the marketing director. So, you know, at that 18-day turnaround time, all you're going to do is frustrate more people who try to interact with your brand and ultimately damage their brand for being non-responsive. So you're smart in stopping it and saying, look, no more until we deal with what we have. And it's uncomfortable, but that has to happen.
I like to use the words activating the customer buyer journey. And what I mean by that is a little bit of what you touched on. People are investing in sales tools, CRM, they're investing in training, they're investing in lead generation activities, they're spending money with influence writing content, right? They're doing all of these things, and they may attack one portion at a time, but to me, activating the customer buyer journey means bring that the sales, the marketing pieces, the technology, and bring it all together. And it's that understanding that buyer journey and where it all fits and what to use kind of is the key and the hard part. And most people don't spend that kind of investment. They're not thinking of all the ends.
I think where you're going, Dan, and kind of where Kelsey is, in GV, it needs to be holistic. It needs to be thought from all angles and not just brought in alongside the sales team, not just an afterthought, not a checkbox that I did my content marketing, yay us, or I did search, yay us, or GV came in and trained us to be, better people and better leaders, yay us. All these individual things are kind of like, hey, I bought Salesforce. Hey, I did this. I've done my job. I've put all the things out there. Let's call it a day. what happens is there's no quarterback for this. There's no one managing this process and guiding clients. There's a lot of agencies who know bits and pieces, and they sell themselves as the solution. And honestly, sometimes it's multiple agencies. Sometimes it's, having a really good quarterback who can manage 2 or 3 partners. And it's amazing to me that we still look at a lot of this so simplistically, like I'm just going to turn on paid search and leads will go up by 10%. No, who are you? Why do people want to connect with you? How do we do those journeys? How do we work with the sales team? What are the reasons why someone doesn't pick you? And people don't realize that. And we hear this all the time. If I invest $10,000, will I get $40,000 back? And the answer is, I have no idea. And the reality is, what are your reviews like? How fast do you answer calls? Can you take on more clients? Blah, 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 and there's a million questions they can never answer. So the answer becomes, what is your process?
I like that what, both of you mentioned the technology, and whether it's marketing automation or whether it's CRM, I hire a big agency to come and implement marketing automation, or I hire a consulting firm to come implement Salesforce. Well, whoever's telling that agency what the process is that needs to be used, or what the consulting company is going to implement into Salesforce, basically, I see so many customers building bad processes or poor behavior, and they're cementing it into the CRM system. So for a customer who in one of their sales stages has hold for an opportunity stage, and when a salesperson says, okay, well, they're not ready to buy yet, they're going to buy next year, rather than closing the opportunity and creating a new one, they'll create a hold stage, which now makes my total sales cycle 18 months long, when it might be 6 months. And now when that affects me when I'm creating content, because now I have to create essentially in theory, an 18-month drip campaign instead of a 6-month drip campaign. But little tiny things like that, even the vendors who are coming in and maybe Salesforce experts, unless they're also really understanding your sales process and how you want to work with marketing, you're only going to get what the smartest person in that process told you to build.
Yeah, you're right.
And that a process like that, GB, is when they're only thinking about their sales process and not how the customer buys, which is, where people revert back. Again, it's the comfort zone, as you, and honestly, if I'm going to, I have to consider a company sales process as well as a marketing process, and then come up with, how that customer wants to buy. So you do spend a lot of time thinking about the process, but you can't get stuck there. Your process doesn't change the way they buy.
Yep.
When I look at the, HubSpot, I don't know, this is probably 2-3 years ago, when they came out at Inbound and said, well, we're getting rid of the funnel and we're now introducing the flywheel. And while I love the concept and I think that it's true, the funnel is way easier to build for. The funnel is way easier to measure and manage. So, I often teach people that the flywheel is great and it's true, but it's also a very meta process that requires a lot more flexibility and human interaction.
Marianne, we've been talking so much. Were there any questions that popped up while we were chatting that we can go down that rabbit hole?
There was a couple, but you guys have been answering them. Let me, but I really loved the conversation, so I didn't want to stop you.
I just wanted to make sure that if someone had something specifically they wanted us to hone down in the middle of that conversation.
Right. So kind of towards the beginning, okay, so we kind of had one that said, what are the differences between the customer buying journey and a customer sales process? We kind of touched on it. Maybe you could elaborate a little bit more. So they were, the follow-up is getting the sales process down pat is hard enough. Now I have to worry about the customer buying journey. So any advice on that? Like, what are the differences?
Dan, you want to start that? Or Kelsey,
or
anyone?
Start it. Kelsey, yeah. I thought she was ready.
Yeah, my answer is they're not different. The sales journey is part of the overall customer journey. as is what your onboarding experience is like once they become a customer. So it's all in one, but I think exactly what we were speaking to is how you have to have marketing and sales alignment in order to have it be a smooth journey, so that also it doesn't feel disjointed from all the marketing messaging they've been getting. And then if they speak to a salesperson and the messaging or the tone is completely different, that's going to be a jarring experience in that journey as well. So along with having one process and entry points all along the way, you need to ensure some consistency in your messaging, which is a really big miss that we see. And Chris, earlier you were saying, if I spend 5,000, will I get 40,000 in value? I think your answer of I don't know is perfect, because it also matters, well, what are they seeing when they come to your website? Do you have on-site content? Do you have drip campaigns to nurture them? And so many people are just still thinking about those as so separate.
Yeah, all the time we see that. And also, I mean, they don't even understand the reviews that are out there about them. They don't understand, like, we can make them number one, but what if they've got a lot of negative reviews? People aren't going to interact with you. They're not interested, So there's so many variables that go into it that's such a simple question, like, make me a better person. Okay, well, let's learn about, all the things you do and what you're good at, what you're not. And it's a simple question for a very complex answer. And I'm not sure everyone's ready to answer all those questions or comfortable to answer all of them, because many people want to think or appear as if they do know all that. And they're scared to be vulnerable. They're scared to be open. They've sold themselves to their employers as I know it all. And it's tough.
I think it's worth noting that the role of the salesperson that starts has changed so much now, right? With all of this information that's out there, customers, every single prospect comes to you with more knowledge than they had before, and if you put anything out there, they understand competitors or things, and so that role that the salesperson used to have to play, which was educate, on that tool, that part's gone. A lot of them haven't changed their kind of ways to go along, but marketing has gotten better as far as educating prior to, and so they need to adapt and change, how that's sold now. The same things that used to work don't work the same way anymore.
Dan, I think you're right, and that's a really good point. Is traditionally the salespeople, there wasn't this vast internet of knowledge. The salesperson was the educator and then ultimately the person who provided the solution. Now you're coming into this picture with potentially a lot more information and or researching it after you talk. So how does that change the sales position? It doesn't mean you educate less. It just means that maybe you deal with it completely different on how you're going to move them through the process or help them through that process. You're more of a guide instead of being, the only way through.
And they also have so much more information now. So when our salespeople are getting on a call for the first time and they can see which blog posts someone read, which emails they opened, they have a good idea of what's important to that buyer that they would have never had if they were not able to access that through our marketing automation system. So I think that in some ways, salesperson's lives is easier because they know more about what the customer knows.
So I was just going to say, I might be the odd man out here. And Kelsey, I think that you mentioned that the sales process and the buyer's journey, the customer buying journey is the same. And while I guess I'm going to go out on a limb and say that the sales process is one section from speaking from a purely sales perspective. If I was a sales leader listening to this call, the sales process is this defined set of maybe milestones, maybe not steps, because I think with the buyer's journey and looking at a very holistic customer journey, there could be a lot more steps, but there are specific milestones that I'm going to qualify. I am going to do a demo, for instance. I am going to do negotiations. I'm going to close this deal. So I think that in some respects, the sales process can be similar, but there are so many new inroads and audibles that the salesperson has to call, and they are obviously not the keeper of the keys anymore. They are no longer how all of my information about my company or my product gets transmitted to the customer. So I think that it just expands out the customer journey a lot more, but there is some elements of the sales process that stay very similar, I think.
Yes, I think I actually agree with you, and I probably misspoke because when I said the same, I think the sales process, would it be accurate to say that you're saying is one part of the buyer's journey?
Yeah.
Yes, okay, that's.
Yeah.
Okay, that gets rid of all the tension. Can we get the tension back, please?
Well, I think that the person who asked the question, like, I would be confused right now if I was a sales leader and somebody was telling me my sales process is no longer important or relevant, and you're very rarely going to go to a sales leader that's going to say, oh, I'm going to throw out my sales process and I'm just going to start listening to marketing now, because marketing is the last person that I would want to have define my sales process.
You know, GB, what's interesting is a question just got shot through the chat. Someone was having some problems chatting, so I guess they sent it to Dan, and Dan sent it over to us. It said, are there marketing firms that will manage sales too? We're at the point.
My first answer, I'd say, hell no. But go ahead. I want to hear your answer.
No, I mean, we're at the point where we think about this sometimes, and we're like, I don't know how to help them because we keep handing them these opportunities and somehow they can't call back. They can't do that. So we've struggled with this and thought, man, maybe at some point there has to be a call center or something that can help route this or warm them up and just hand them the hot leads ready to go if they're unable to deal with that nurturing process. So it says, will they manage sales too in the question? So can you hire an external marketing / sales firm? I don't know of one.
The closest thing I know of,
Go ahead.
the closest one I know of is a client of ours is a company actually out of St. Louis called Linked Selling. And they do a lot of the marketing. And then more recently, they've taken on also calling leads and then setting up a call from there. So that's like one step into the sales process, but they're still then handing it off to a salesperson on your team. So that's an example I would see of a marketing company going a little further, but still not taking on the full sales management.
And I guess I would ask, go ahead, Dan.
I was going to say, it's something I've thought of a lot because, as marketers, we get judged by the success, and, we can give a qualified lead, but if somebody can't close it, it's hard to, we can't control that. So it's hard to be judged on that. So I've explored lots of different ways. And like Kelsey just said, that's kind of, taking over the inside sales. What I'll say is the way that marketing handles it is with different types of companies, which is, I call product-led growth, which is eliminate the salesperson and sell everything online and answer all of the questions, right? So that cheaper sale is, sure, you market, you can take it all the way if you can anticipate what the question is, and you can answer it and give them each message along the way. But that's one step towards it. But otherwise, I don't know of a company brave enough to do that.
Some young lady named Sarah chatted with me and said, "That's what I do." So I think there are smaller independent. I just don't know if there's larger organizations that do it.
I would also maybe separate this question into two different parts. So is there one company that is managing all of my marketing and they're doing all of my sales process? Or is there a company who can come in and oversee and look at both my marketing and maybe understand both my marketing and my sales and advise my team to be able to do things in a more effective way? And so honestly, that's something that I often help companies at a very high level strategic perspective. They have a sales leader and they have a marketing leader. They just don't talk very well together, or they don't understand the inflection points. And I think Atomic Revenue here in town would be a good person that can go in and very holistically look at the whole process and help. I would say, again, I might be stepping out on a limb here, I wouldn't put both departments under one organization. Marketers are not great salespeople. Salespeople are oftentimes not great marketers. There is a huge reason to have them working in alignment and together, but sales is driven very much by different things than marketing is driven. Salespeople are not going to care about brand. They're going to think that brand is worthless. Us marketers oftentimes know that there is value in brand. So I don't know about combining them together.
And I think when you said that they're not going to care about the same things, one thing that we made a change on that has made them more care about the same things is how we incentivize both departments. Yeah. So we used to have that, marketing had goals around website traffic. Now, marketing gets commission on sales that are closed that were generated by marketing. And so they are fully focused on what can we do to close more sales. They know that brand is important to that, so they're still going to put some, value to brand, but at the end of the day, aligning those incentives, I think, is so important and something that so many companies miss.
I totally agree.
Kelsey, to that point, when you align your marketing team to, they benefit from the sales that they produce, did they start moving towards the bottom of the funnel and trying to focus there and move away from the brand building, move away from some of the stuff GB was saying that will not provide instantaneous? Can they create that long view still if they're under the short view win?
One of the reasons that I think they have been able to create that long view is that we try really hard to kind of reverse engineer the attribution from each of our sales. And what we find is that it's never one thing. It's never, like you said, this linear path. And so a lot of times somebody might find us from an article, but then they watch one of our webinars, but then they knew a past client. So marketing, I think, doing those deep dives into our people that come on as new sales and really trying to understand what were all of those touch points, it still puts that value to the marketing team of all of these touch points matter. It's not just what was that last bottom of the funnel touch point that ended up getting them on a sale, because they know that all of these things impact it. What's difficult is so many of those are really hard to measure. And so part of it is, it's an art and a science when the marketing team is thinking where to direct resources.
And that's all I was thinking is because the sales goal of, maybe a big part of their income is the revenue from the new sale opportunity, and the marketing was free of that, meaning they could explore the brand, get more of those articles out there, all of your information out there to start those journeys that 6, 12, 18 months later, maybe even 2 years later, turn into opportunities. Does it push them more towards the things that produce the immediate gratification and away from that? That's all I was kind of curious on, because I love your idea.
So she mentioned attribution models, and I think that a lot of times when I work with sales teams, they devalue marketing because they think that they're the ones that are making the sale. Well, we closed the business. We had all of these calls. I did the demo, therefore I should get the commission. And for all the Brene Brown fans out there, I talk about every deal being a marble jar. And that salesperson doesn't often know how full that jar is by the time they get to them. Marketing could have filled 60% of those marbles up by the time sales gets the lead, or maybe 60 or 70%, and sales is just dropping in the last 30% of the marbles. If you don't have, I'm not saying it's easy or I'm not saying it's inexpensive, but if you don't have a multi-touch attribution model that can truly show you where your leads are coming from, you're never going to really know the answer to that. And it's a hard problem to solve.
Yeah.
This is a really great conversation, guys. We do have another question here. Kind of going back to the customer buying journey. Is the customer buying journey just the latest management fad? How permanent is it? And why should I dedicate time and resources to this?
I think we've been talking about the customer journey for years. We're just trying to better define it and figure out it may not be linear. It may not be the same journey for every person. It's how far do you change it before there's a diminishing return? How many paths can you create? What is that? So I'm not sure it's a fad or it's new. I think what it is it's just the natural evolution with the technology and information we have, and that attribution modeling to be able to reverse what Kelsey was saying, reverse engineer how they got to them and ultimately made that decision. So I think it's the constant learning and adapting.
It's
I don't
been in
know.
B2C for, sorry, GB, you want to go?
I was just going to say, I think some of it is an evolution. I also think some of it is a recentering. This is we have overcorrected with technology. So we went from, mid 90s and from history, having a salesperson sell a thing. And then technology came around and we started using marketing automation and all of these tools, and we automated everything. And we thought that we could just send one drip campaign to one person and it would work. And now we've realized that didn't work so well. So actually we're coming back into a little more human nature, and we're implementing more humanity into the sales process that we have squeezed out with automation. Now, to your point, things like multi-touch attribution models and being able to use technology in combination with some humanity, I think is where the customer buying journey is coming back to.
And to your point, GV, I think what's old is new again. And when you automate everything to death, it's not unique. It doesn't differentiate. It doesn't stand out, but that personal touch does. I get letters once in a while, thank you letters, not an email, a thank you letter, and it really stands out. But 20 years ago, that's what you would expect. Sure. So it's really interesting on how we kind of roll back to the human touch, away from the automation and that, and how as humans we crave connections with other people, and how that salesperson or that marketing person can help achieve that with a team member inside. So it isn't just an automated, I'm not just buying from Amazon an umbrella for my table. This is a process, and I would love to talk to someone and experience and hear things. So I think you're right. I meant it as an evolution, as it's always auto-correcting, because we seem to go too far all the time. And the evolution is we just try to get better and better. Sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't. We learn and adjust.
Yeah. Don't you think this last year has probably taken what was heavy personal touch, then got heavy automated, but now how did our challenge was, how do we bring the personal touch to technology, with all these Zooms and the things we've done. And so in a way, it feels like it's, kind of blending together. We've had to all adapt our sales process to become more personable. Like, I used to think nobody would ever hire us if they didn't come to our office and see how creative they were. And, now, like, I don't even share a picture of our office, right? It's, I forget what it looks like. So I still think it's cool. It's still there. But it's changed. You've had to take and get more human in a digital world. And it's been kind of a fun change, I think.
But Dan, that's using technology to enhance humanity with the Zoom. So what's crazy is you've been able to scale yourself out more. Do you know how many meetings that you couldn't go to because it required an hour to get there, 4 hours to be there, an hour to get back, half an hour to coordinate, to do all this, that now you can just do in a Zoom call and be done. But you still get to have that personal Dan experience. Because I look forward to it myself.
Well, I like you. I like seeing what's behind you, right? It's except for Kelsey's hiding something because she's got a blank wall. But yeah, yeah. So, but it says something about you. You're looking in my living room now, and I think we get a different glimpse into people that have made, one of those sales elements that you only get when you go face to face is that personal connection. But now, in a way, we get to start out a call with that. So I think it's come a long ways, and like you said, a lot more efficient. So,
Dan, if you say anything about GV's stuffed animals, I will find you and hunt you down and defend GV's honor. Okay.
The sign behind me, which is the sign behind me, which is sort of blurred out, says never underestimate my ability to find shit out. It's very true.
The only thing I was going to note about the stuffed animals is that when GB was passionate about what salespeople weren't doing, he had the same look as the one on the right, the purple. He had that kind of look there. It was fun.
Kelsey, you've hidden yourself in obscurity. We want to learn personal things about you.
We're in the process of moving, so I was not going to decorate a rental home. In a few weeks, you'll see my new office.
Woo.
There we go.
Marianne, were there any other questions or rabbit holes people wanted to go down?
There is one more that I did want to squeeze in before the end here. Hold on. They were having some issues with chat, so actually they texted it to me. Hang on. Okay, here we go. Okay, so understanding how the customer thinks about the sales process makes a lot of sense in principle. Practically, how will it make us more money and increase revenue?
I think the logical extension of that is if you understand your customers, it essentially greases the wheels to get you to opportunities where you're connecting better, and theoretically you can allocate your time to the opportunities, so it doesn't create more revenue for you. It creates the opportunity to help you create more revenue if everything else is good.
And I think that people want to work with companies that they trust. And if you can show the customer that you understand them and their pain points and that you get it and you're there as a support, that will build trust. You can't build trust with someone who you don't understand or you can't relate to.
And I would say that this is a little on the woo-woo side, but one of our fundamental human needs is to belong. Like we fundamentally need to belong to feel good about ourselves. And this customer journey mapping is a way to transmit and transmute some belonging, so your customer wants to be a part of the team. Like, we're really taking the customer's needs into account as we build out these journeys. And the more they feel like they belong in the process and they're leading it, the more likely they are going to want to buy stuff from us.
I know there's something I always say is you can't tell someone how smart you are. You have to show them, and having this process is really a way that things kind of come to life and show, and how you show what you know about it. Back to Kelsey's point, right? Education, it's a method we all use, and I think it's show them versus tell.
So does anybody have any more closing thoughts? Because we actually only have a couple minutes left. Maybe we could go through and just, Dan, do you want to start just a little wrap up? Dan, and then Kelsey, Chris, and GV, and then we'll close.
Sir, I think a wrap up kind of the way we started. It's not how something you put out there. It's not how you want to sell. It's how customers want to buy, and understanding how it does map to your sales process, because you do have a process and it's important to have that, but adapt it to the customer journey and integrate that, align that marketing with it, is an exercise that, to Chris's point, a lot of people don't do, but you really have to get in there and uncover who your ideal customer profile is and what their journey is, and something we didn't talk about, even who influences them, right? But that's upfront work that has to happen to have any success with marketing.
Kelsey?
I would just reiterate something that I think I talked about a lot, which is marketing and sales alignment. So if you're watching this and don't really know, well, what's one action step to take after this? I would say understand how your sales and marketing teams are working together and where there's alignment or misalignment, and start there, because that's going to solve a lot of issues in the journey.
Thank you.
As a follow-up to Kelsey and Dan, I think we run into so many opportunities where, yes, we can create some success for you just running a campaign. The reality is, to be very successful, you have to do all the upfront work. You have to think about it. You have to be willing to invest the time. And honestly, you just have to be vulnerable and open to it and absorb this information. If you do all that and you spend it, it is valuable time and money, and it will make any campaign that gets executed perform better, create more revenue, and ultimately achieve the goals that people are looking for. Yes, we can run PPC campaigns and get you leads, but there's a smarter way to do it.
GV?
Yeah, and Kelsey stole mine. I would have said sales and marketing alignment is absolutely critical. And I guess what I frequently tell people is personas don't buy things, people do. And you can automate your marketing as much as you want to, but it will never get down to the human feel that talking to a person and sending a specific piece of content at the right time is going to make a big difference.
Thank you all. Thanks to all the panelists. You guys were great. This was a great conversation today. And actually, since I gave out my cell phone and email, I'm getting all kinds of comments that they're all enjoying this so much and they like the humor. So you guys were fantastic. So it looks like we're at time. We hope everyone has found value in our panel today. We look forward to your feedback, which I'm already getting via text and email. Keep sending that. And thank you to all the sponsors. Please feel free to reach out to any of the panelists. We have all the emails up there, or you can connect with us on LinkedIn. Thank you to Enterprise Banks, Schmersahl, Treloar, Spoke Marketing, St. Louis Makes, Carmody McDonald. And it's been an honor to be your moderator today. Check out our next one in 2 weeks, May 11th. And that one, we will be answering questions on how to effectively incorporate digital media into your sales process. So we will see you all then. Thank you. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks all.